I'm Evelyn, and I was born just 4 minutes before my younger sister. Just 4 minutes, but enough to shape a lifetime of unfairness. My sister Natalie and I are twins. We grew up in the same two-story house in suburban Salem, Oregon. But if anyone had stepped inside, they'd never believe we were sisters, let alone twins. My mom used to joke with her friends that Natalie was her perfect little copy-gentle, feminine, stylish since birth. I, on the other hand, was too strong, too independent, too unladylike, in her words. As a kid, I didn't understand why Natalie always got everything before me. Princess dresses, toy kitchen sets, even the things I wished for but never had the chance to ask. On our 7th birthday, Natalie got an outdoor party, a 3-tier cake, and an instant camera. I was assigned to clean up afterward. When I asked why, my mom gave a dismissive smile and said, "Because you're the older sister, you should learn to share. Don't be selfish." The favoritism didn't stop at gifts. At meals, Mom always gave Natalie the best portions. If Natalie spilled water or broke a bowl, I got blamed for not watching your sister. When I got an A, Mom nodded like it meant nothing. But if Natalie earned a B+, she bragged to the whole neighborhood. I used to think maybe I was clumsy or just not good enough, but the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't about me doing something wrong. It was that I had never been looked at with fairness. I was a plan B in the very house I was born into. My dad, a quiet man who avoided conflict, never once stood up for me. He openly doted on Natalie, calling her his little princess, driving her to ballet every Saturday while I rode my bike alone to art class. Once, I asked him why he never came to watch me compete in art contests. He sighed and said, "You're already good. You don't need praise." It sounded encouraging, but all I felt was an emptiness that grew day by day. The only one who truly saw me, really saw me, was my grandmother. She was the first to teach me how to hold a paintbrush and always had butter cookies ready when I was down. She once said, "Evelyn, you're like me. People don't notice you right away, but once they do, they can't look away." I held on to that like a shield whenever I got hurt. I learned not to expect anything from my parents. I taught myself how to do homework alone, how to sew up my old clothes while Natalie went shopping with Mom. I learned to hold back tears when Mom said, "Why do you always look so grumpy? Be more like Natalie." I thought things would change when we got older, but they didn't. When we turned 18, our parents told me, straight to my face, that the college savings could only cover one of us. And of course, that one was Natalie. They didn't hide it. They weren't even sorry. They just said, "You'll figure it out. You're strong." That sentence repeated in my mind like a sentence being passed. I left home with exactly $217.00 in my account, a suitcase of old clothes, and a laptop my grandmother left me before she passed. Everything I had, none of it came from my parents. And from the moment I stepped out of that house, I swore I'd never let anyone devalue me again. I rented a tiny room near the local community college. The walls were painted a faded yellow. The hardwood floors creaked with every step. But at least it was the first place I could call home. No yelling, no judgment, no denial of who I was. By day, I studied graphic design full-time. By night, I worked as a cashier at a 24-hour convenience store. Sometimes I was so tired I'd nod off while standing at the register. But I never complained. I didn't have the luxury of options. No parental safety net, no savings account in my name, no childhood friends to study with. I had only myself and a handful of dreams not yet realized. I always tried harder than others. Every assignment, I went beyond the requirements. Every personal project, I spent extra hours researching, tweaking, polishing. Partly out of passion, partly to prove I wasn't invisible. And slowly, it paid off. In my second year, I won a full-ride scholarship through a partner program with a prestigious university in Seattle. It was the biggest turning point in my life at that point. I remember my hands shaking as I opened the email. I had to read it 3 times before I believed it. The scholarship didn't just cover tuition, It included a monthly living stipend. For the first time in years, I could quit my night job and actually sleep. I texted my mom to share the news. No response. 2 days later, she replied, "Good. Natalie just got into an advanced yoga course. She'll be teaching soon instead of just following videos." I'm so happy. I reread that message. No matter what I did, it could never compare to Natalie doing yoga. I remember in 12th grade, I won first prize in a statewide art competition, and a famous judge said I had rare artistic instinct. I brought the painting home. Mom glanced at it and said, "So? You're going to be a starving artist? That's not a real career." A week later, Natalie posted a scribble online with the caption, "My first drawing gig." Mom printed it out, framed it, and hung it in the living room. I once told Dad I'd been selected as a teaching assistant for the illustration department, an honor only 2 students in the entire program received. He nodded and changed the subject to how Natalie was thinking about starting a minimalist lifestyle vlog. "She's a natural at sharing. She'll be famous," he laughed. "And you? Well, just keep up the good GPA." I learned to fake a smile instead of arguing. I knew they wouldn't change. To them, Natalie would always be the graceful pride, and I'd be the independent fighter, meaning they could conveniently leave me out because I was strong. But I started to understand. I wasn't striving to impress them. I was striving to free myself from their definitions. I didn't need their approval, but I did need to recognize my own worth. Professor Carson, my mentor, once said, "Evelyn, you have the eye of a visual storyteller, and that's not something you can teach." That sentence lit up my world in those darkest months. I started painting more, uploading my work to a design forum. To my surprise, a digital art magazine reached out and asked to interview me for their Rising Star section. When the article came out, I secretly sent the link to my mom. 3 weeks later, she replied, "Too long." I didn't read all of it, but Natalie just dyed her hair. "It looks amazing." I wasn't angry, I just felt nothing. That's when I knew I had truly grown up, when their silence no longer suffocated me. I printed that interview and slipped it into a journal where I kept everything that made me proud. I knew there were more obstacles ahead. I'd moved to Seattle at 20 to start the transfer program at a top private university, and ironically, just a few months later, Natalie applied and got accepted to the same school. We weren't in the same major. I studied visual communications, she enrolled in marketing communications, but the campus was small enough that I'd catch glimpses of her around lecture halls, the cafeteria, or the library. She always wore an expensive hoodie, spotless sneakers, and a designer bag I knew Mom picked out. I remember the first day of the school year. Natalie arrived in a car Dad rented just for her. I took the bus. Almost an hour from my tiny rental on the edge of the city. I never said it aloud, but every time I stepped through that school gate, I felt like I was walking into a world I didn't belong to. Everything gleamed, everything was polished, and I was all patched up. Natalie lived in the nicest dorm on campus, a double room she paid to have all to herself. Our parents not only covered her full tuition, they sent her a monthly allowance so she could focus without worries. As for me, I worked 3 jobs, waiting tables at a pizza place in the evenings, cleaning the library lobby early mornings, and picking up small freelance design gigs online on weekends. Some nights I barely slept. I worked, I studied, I survived in a tiny room where I had to curl up just to fit on a worn-out sofa left behind by a previous tenant. But I never once complained. Not because I wasn't tired, but because I was so used to having only myself to count on. One time, during a joint visual communication class, the professor assigned a group presentation. Natalie and I were placed in the same group. Coincidence or irony, I still don't know. During the discussion, I suggested a campaign using illustrated graphics with interactive video. Natalie scoffed. "That idea's creative, but kind of hard to understand. I think we should go with something simpler, more accessible. Let's do spring fashion, fun, bright, viral." The rest of the group agreed with her, and I, not wanting to cause tension, nodded. I ended up doing all the graphic design, video editing, and effects, while Natalie made the slideshow and gave the main presentation. After class, the professor sent me a private email. "I know you built the foundation of this entire project. You have leadership potential, but you need to learn to speak up and stand by your ideas." I read that email over and over all night. It was both praise and a sting, because he was right. I was always the quiet shadow behind the scenes. Natalie was different. She stood out. She organized photo shoots, ran the fashion club, always knew just what to say to be called charming and confident. On social media, she had thousands of followers. My parents constantly bragged to relatives. "Natalie fits in so quickly. She's a natural leader. She knows how to build a personal brand." And me? My mom once called just to ask, "Did you send groceries to Natalie yet? She said she's been too busy to get to the store this week." I didn't respond. I stood in my cramped kitchen, staring at the discounted pack of ramen in my hand, speechless. I knew I wasn't invisible. I knew I was on the right path. But sometimes, watching Natalie get honored at school events while I stood under the dim lights below, my heart still sank. I wasn't jealous of her. I just wished, just once, my parents could look at me, really look, and say, "You did great, Evelyn." But maybe that would never happen. And in that exact moment, I realized I would stop waiting. Not everyone is born to be acknowledged by the people they most hope to impress. But that doesn't mean they don't deserve it. At the end of my third semester, while most students were planning spring break trips, I quietly applied for internships. No one told me to. No one encouraged me. I read the postings on the school bulletin board, sent out email after email, editing every line of my resume like my future depended on each period. Natalie was different. Over a rare lunch between classes, she said, "Mom told me to just focus on school, not worry about internships yet. Dad will help me get a spot through his connections later." I just smiled. I didn't have those kinds of connections. Eventually, after 7 emails and 3 interviews, I was accepted as a design intern at a creative agency focused on educational media. The pay was low, but the office was cozy, the environment professional, and most importantly, they let me do real work, not filing papers or making coffee. I received feedback, revised my drafts, and saw my designs actually get printed, for the first time. At the same time, I enrolled in an evening advanced class on interactive interface simulation. It only met Friday nights, and barely anyone was interested, but I knew it was a skill employers were looking for. I cut my pizza shop shifts and made up for it with extra freelance gigs on weekends. Life back then was all about sketches, deadlines, and instant noodles, but I felt like I was living, not just surviving. One evening after class, Professor Ann Whitmore called me aside. She taught visual communication and was the toughest professor in the department. I never thought she noticed me beyond grading my work. "Evelyn," she said in a calm, firm tone, "I've been following your progress since last semester. Have you ever heard of the Benjamin Ford Honor Scholarship?" I froze. Of course I had. It was the school's most prestigious award, given to senior students with leadership potential in the creative field. It covered tuition, living expenses, and included a 3-month international internship. I swallowed. I read about it, but I didn't think I was qualified. She looked me straight in the eye. "You are, but you'll need a recommendation. I'm willing to write it, if you're serious about applying." That night, I spent hours reviewing the application. When I saw the list of past recipients, top graduates, national award winners with standout personal projects, I started to doubt myself. But then I thought about those mornings mopping library floors, those late nights on the bus ride home just to finish one more draft. I had come too far to stop now out of fear. I began the application. Every personal statement section I wrote and rewrote at least 10 times. I didn't know how to tell my story. the girl without a privileged start who never gave up, in a way that would resonate. So I wrote it exactly as I had lived it. No sugarcoating, no hiding. 2 weeks later, I was called for an interview. Natalie found out. She casually asked, "Wait, you applied for the Ford Scholarship? I thought only, standout students got nominated." I didn't reply. I knew that to her, stand out meant being seen by many. But I chose to stand out by letting my work speak. On results day, I was at my internship when the email came. I had been selected. Not only that, I was one of just 3 students nationwide accepted into the International Internship Program in the Netherlands, a chance I once thought only existed in dreams. I stood in the office, hands trembling, eyes welling up. I didn't call my mom. I didn't text my dad. I didn't post it online. I simply emailed Professor Whitmore. "Thank you. I won't let you down." And silently I told myself, "Evelyn, you don't need anyone's validation. You just proved you're capable, resilient, and more than worthy." I received the Benjamin Ford Fellowship on a crisp March morning in Seattle. The confirmation email popped up while I was making coffee for my coworkers. My heart raced as I read the bold words, "Congratulations, you have been awarded the Benjamin Ford National Fellowship." I had to read it 3 times to believe it. I'd earned one of the top 5 national fellowships. Not by luck, but by every sleepless night, every painstaking revision, and every invisible effort no one had noticed. I did it. And I did it alone. All day I felt like I was floating. Coworkers hugged me. Professor Whitmore sent a short, heartfelt email. "I'm so proud of you, Evelyn." I thought I no longer needed anyone's recognition. But that night, back in my tiny apartment, I opened my phone and messaged my mom. "I just got the Benjamin Ford Scholarship. Only 5 people nationwide were selected. I'm one of them." I stared at the screen, heart fluttering as if hoping for a miracle. Despite all the past letdowns, part of me still wished maybe this time would be different. The message was seen after 11 minutes. 30 minutes later, she replied, "Oh, really? I'm cooking right now. I'll tell Natalie to call you later. She just hit 20,000 views on her new makeup tutorial." I read the message without blinking. A long while later, I closed my phone, set it on the table, and laughed. Not the joyful kind, but the dry, hollow laugh that holds back tears. Natalie never called back. No one asked what the scholarship was, how much it was worth, or what it took to earn it. They didn't care, and if they did, it was only to compare it with a social media video. I should have been angry. But I wasn't. I just felt empty. Maybe because this time, I no longer expected anything. I had learned the hardest truth. Some people, no matter how hard you try, will never see you. 3 days later, I received the official invitation from the scholarship board, along with an invite to the awards ceremony in New York the following month. Flights, hotel, everything was fully covered. I stood in my room holding the thick cardstock letter, feeling like I was finally holding what I'd always longed for: recognition, respect, and real worth. I didn't post anything online. No photos, no status updates. I just took a picture of the invitation and sent it to my grandma, the one person who had truly seen me. She was gone, but I still kept her number in my phone, still wrote to her when I had something to share. This time I wrote, "Grandma, I did it. You once said the world would notice me one day. Today I believe you were right." The night before I flew to New York, I got a call from my dad, a rare thing. He simply said, "Your mom mentioned you got some scholarship. That's good, congratulations." Then silence. No follow-up questions, no more words. I almost replied, but didn't. Maybe silence was the only way to end a conversation that had never truly begun. I boarded the plane with a small suitcase, wearing the one formal dress I borrowed from a classmate, a navy blue, simple but elegant. During the award ceremony, when my name was called, the whole room stood and applauded. I walked onto the stage under bright lights, but my heart was completely clear. I didn't need family in the front row. I didn't need proud looks from my parents. I had made it here, and no one could take that from me. I realized sometimes you can't force others to see your worth, but you can create that worth and live a life that makes them regret ever doubting you. The award hall in New York glowed with camera flashes and lights. Around me sat top students, respected professors, and executives from major U.S. media companies. The atmosphere was formal but not stiff, and inside I felt oddly calm. When the host took the stage and began announcing the Inspirational Leader of the Year award, a special title given to just one Benjamin Ford Fellow, I expected nothing more than to applaud someone else's moment. But then he said my name. Evelyn Brooks, a communication design student from Seattle who overcame every barrier, financial and personal, to rise by her own merit and extraordinary will. I didn't catch the rest. The room stood, the lights turned toward me, and I walked onto the stage to long applause. I accepted the glass trophy, my hands trembling slightly, but my eyes unwavering. This moment was mine, and I knew I had earned it. After the ceremony, I was invited backstage to a private networking event for standout candidates. There, I met Jacqueline Myers, the creative director of a multinational media company, and someone I had idolized since high school. "Evelyn, I've read your file," she said, shaking my hand. Her gaze was sharp but warm. "You don't just have talent, you have grit. We'd like to offer you a spot in our mentorship program for rising creatives. We'll cover all your living expenses through the end of the year so you can focus fully on growing your skills." I held my breath. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a turning point. I left the event under the soft, glowing lights of New York City. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages from friends, professors, even people I didn't know who had seen the short video of my speech posted online. Within a few hours, it had been shared thousands of times. I opened a message from an unknown number. It was my mom. "I just watched your speech. You spoke so confidently. Your father saw it too. He said, 'Maybe we never really understood you.'" A short message, no apology, no direct acknowledgement, but it was the first time they admitted that there might be something about me worth reconsidering. I didn't respond right away. I needed time. Not to forgive, but to figure out whether I still needed their approval at all. The next day, Natalie called. I hesitated but picked up. "Hey." Her voice was softer than usual. "I just watched your video. I didn't think you were that good." I said nothing. She continued, slower this time. I'm sorry for always looking down on you. I thought you just doodled to pass the time, but I was wrong. I didn't feel happy or sad, just empty. Because apologies, especially late ones, can't undo the past. I had come too far to turn around and search for validation. I answered, calmly. "Thank you, Natalie. I hope you find something worth chasing too. Not for Mom and Dad, but for yourself." The conversation ended in silence. But for the first time, there wasn't that invisible competition between us anymore. Maybe we'd go our separate ways. And that was enough. That night, I sat by the hotel window, watching the city lights reflect on the glass table. I opened my laptop, pulled up my inbox, and typed my first reply to Ms. Myers. "I'm ready. Thank you for believing in me." Under those lights, I knew I had stepped through a major door, not into someone else's world of success, but into a life I chose and owned. I was no longer Evelyn, the one overlooked behind Natalie, no longer the strong one who didn't need care. I was just me. And for the first time, that was enough. 2 weeks after I returned from the awards ceremony, my mom unexpectedly called and invited me home for dinner. "Something warm and cozy?" she said. Her voice over the phone sounded different, gentler, like she was testing the waters to see if I'd refuse. I paused for a few seconds, then said yes. I didn't know what waited for me in that house after all those years of emotional distance, but I knew it was time to face it. Not to hold on, but to let go. That afternoon, the old house on Evergreen Street looked just as I remembered it. Cream curtains, plaid fabric sofa, the old tilted family photo on the wooden shelf. But something had changed. Maybe it was me. Or the way they looked at me. Mom stepped out of the kitchen, towel in hand, her eyes cautious but hopeful. Dad sat in the living room, wearing reading glasses I knew he wasn't using. Natalie was there too, perched on the staircase, silently watching. Dinner started with small talk. Mom mentioned the new neighbors. Dad asked about the weather in New York. Natalie threw in a comment about a new marketing class she'd enrolled in. I listened quietly, feeling like a guest in the house I once called home. After the dishes were cleared, Mom invited me into the living room. Dad had removed his glasses and was looking at me, for once, without hiding anything. "We want to talk to you," Mom began. "About everything. And about what's happened." I sat up straight, hands resting on my knees. "I'm listening." Mom glanced at Dad, then back at me. "We know we weren't fair to you. I'm sorry. But back then, things were hard. We just thought you were strong. You'd be fine." I took a deep breath. Yeah, I know. I heard that my whole life. That I'm strong, that I'd figure it out, that I didn't need anything. My voice wasn't raised, but every word sliced through the air like a thin blade. I looked straight into their eyes, unflinching, for the first time. "But did you ever think," I continued, voice trembling, "that I wanted to be weak, too? That I wished, just once, you'd ask, 'Are you tired? Are you okay?' But you never did. And now, honestly, I don't need it anymore." My dad looked away, a flicker of shame in his eyes. Mom nodded, her eyes red but dry. "You're still our daughter," she said softly. "Can we start over?" I smiled, bittersweet but calm. Start over? Maybe, but it won't be the same, because now I have boundaries. I don't need approval anymore. I don't live for one-sided love. If you want to know who I am, I'll share, but if not, I won't wait. Natalie had stayed silent on the stairs through the whole conversation. As I stood to grab my bag, ready to leave, she called out, "Evelyn." I turned. She walked over, a little hesitant. "Do you think you made things harder? I mean, now Mom and Dad compare everything to you. I feel like I'll never be enough." I looked at her, really looked. Natalie, once wrapped in layers of favoritism, now stood lost and unsure. "I never did anything to make you feel less," I said gently. "I just lived the life I deserved. And you can too. But you'll have to stand up on your own. Stop waiting for Mom and Dad to pave the way." Natalie lowered her head, saying nothing more. I didn't blame her. I knew that if I was once the shadow behind her spotlight, now the roles were slowly reversing. And that scared her. On the way home, I rolled down the car window, letting the wind carry away the weight of the evening. I didn't feel angry or hurt, just light. I moved to New York on a June morning, the sun soft, the breeze dancing through the city streets like the city itself was welcoming me. My suitcase clicked along the stone pavement, and in my chest was a mix of nerves and freedom. A new chapter opening, one I had chosen myself. The media company where I'd met Ms. Jacqueline Myers officially welcomed me to the creative team as an assistant project director. It was my first job after graduation, and the first place where my skills were truly valued. The office sat on the 22nd floor of a glass building near Midtown Manhattan. Every morning, I walked from my cozy Brooklyn apartment, coffee in hand, catching the scent of pastries from street vendors. Life in New York was fast and loud, but to me, it was a symphony of freedom and ambition. I had never felt like I belonged anywhere the way I did here. The job was demanding, but I thrived in the chaos. Intense brainstorming meetings, late-night idea revisions, projects displayed on billboards in Times Square. It all made me feel alive. Occasionally, I got messages from my mom, mostly holiday wishes, health updates, or distant family news I no longer cared about. I always replied, Polite, respectful. Not cold, but no longer close. There was now a soft distance between us. Not painful, but wide enough that I no longer expected anything. Natalie messaged me sometimes, too. A picture from her new yoga class, a fun video with her friends. Once, just a message. I suddenly remembered that pumpkin soup you used to make. I didn't know if it was a memory or an unspoken apology. I simply replied, "Yeah, I still remember how to make it." Even after letting go, sometimes, in the quiet nights of the city that never sleeps, my heart still tightened when I thought about family. Not because I was angry, because I had once loved them so much, I forgot myself. I focused on building a new world, a life not based on others' expectations. I learned to cook better, decorated my small apartment with my own artwork, occasionally attended weekend exhibits. My friends in New York were all self-made, people who had stumbled but stood back up. They didn't know my past, and I didn't need them to. One evening, over drinks with friends after work, someone asked me, "Evelyn, you always seem so strong and composed. Have you ever needed someone to lean on?" I smiled, without bitterness. I have, but I learned to lean on myself. And honestly, it's not a bad feeling. This city has taught me many things. That I don't need anyone to define me. That distance doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes, it's a space to reflect and realize what truly matters. I'm no longer the girl who waited for a father's glance, a mother's praise, or a genuine hug from her sister. I'm Evelyn, the version of myself that I had to fight to become. I still call home on major holidays. Mom talks more now, mostly about health, recipes, or what flowers the neighbor just planted. Dad usually just says hi, then goes quiet. Natalie sometimes jumps in with small talk. We all know the connection now is just a gentle obligation, not a tether of the heart. I left, not to run, but to begin a new life. One where I didn't need anyone's permission to live honestly. And here, in this city that never sleeps, I've finally awakened. I turned 26 on a clear fall morning in New York. No loud parties, no glowing candles on a cake, just a hot cup of coffee, a small pastry roll, and the soft sunlight spilling through the fifth-floor apartment window I now called home. I spent the morning reflecting on how far I'd come. From the child living in her sister's shadow, to the student juggling jobs at night, to the woman I am now. With a job I love, kind friends, and a little space of my own where I could breathe without walking on eggshells. I realized I no longer thought of my family with sadness or longing for approval. The half-hearted birthday calls from my mother became something I no longer expected. I still replied politely, but my heart wasn't in it. It wasn't indifference. It was peace. I used to think family was unchanging, that I had to earn love from the people who raised me. But the truth is, some relationships exist only out of habit and duty, not understanding or presence. One evening after work, I stayed late at the office to finish the final draft of a new project plan. The soft light poured over the desk as I looked up at the bulletin board, covered in notes, sketches, and reminders. And suddenly it hit me, this was all built by me. No one pushed me to succeed, no one held my hand. Every achievement was mine alone. I never had a family who stood behind me, lifting me up, but I had something even more valuable. Belief in myself, even when the world didn't believe in me. I built a life not on a foundation laid out for me, but from broken pieces I wasn't sure could ever fit together. My friends, the ones I chose, often tell me I have a quiet kind of magnetism. Not because I'm loud or flashy, but because I always show up with steadiness. And they don't know how long it took for me to become steady, how often I wanted to disappear just to feel less lost. I used to think that if my parents saw me succeed, they would change. But now I understand, not everyone is ready to admit they were wrong, especially when that wrong has lasted for years. And I don't need that admission anymore. Love, it turns out, isn't something you chase endlessly in others. It begins the moment you stop chasing and start finding it within. I started journaling again. Not to complain, but to record the small things I was grateful for. A traffic-free morning, a compliment from my boss, or the neighbor's cat tapping at my window for cookies. I realized happiness doesn't come from grand gestures. It lives in the ability to notice beauty in the simplest of things. One Sunday afternoon, I walked through Central Park. Golden leaves scattered the paths, and a violinist played a soft lullaby in the distance. I sat on a bench and opened my phone to a message from Natalie. I know I wasn't the sister you hoped for, but I'm trying. Thank you for not hating me, even when I was selfish. I smiled. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel that it was too late. We might never be those picture-perfect sisters, but I no longer resented her. We'd grown up, and each of us was learning what it meant to be an adult in our own way. I closed my phone and took a deep breath. I'm still Evelyn, the girl who once dreamed of a warm family, who once broke down for being unseen, who once believed she wasn't enough. But now I know. I don't have to be enough in anyone else's eyes. I only need to be honest with myself. One spring morning, I sat in my small Brooklyn apartment. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows across my desk as I sketched the first concepts for a personal project. Not for a client, not for anyone waiting, just because I wanted to, because I loved it. And I realized I had never felt more real. I had grown, not because I had a stable job or because my coworkers respected me, but because I no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. I still called home now and then to check on Mom's health. The conversations were short and gentle, no longer laced with bitterness. Dad didn't say much, but once he told me, "Your mom talks about you a lot, about your work. She's proud, she just doesn't know how to say it." I didn't ask for more. I smiled, thanked him, and changed the subject. Because I understood, some things don't need to be spoken aloud to be real. Natalie lives in Portland now. She just started her first job after completing a mental health coaching course. She sent me a picture of the small class she leads, along with a short note. "You once told me to find something for myself. I think I finally get it." I replied with a heart emoji and a quick congrats. No need for long explanations. Between us now, the connection wasn't about obligation. It came from a sincere effort to understand each other. Late, but honest. I no longer resent my family. I don't romanticize the past either. I see it as it was. A chapter that hurt me, but one that also taught me how to stand. And because of that, I now treasure kindness, even the smallest kind, in the present. I've reconnected with a few old friends from Seattle, people who supported me quietly but whom I had drifted from while running away from my past. Here, in this bustling city, I've begun building a different kind of family, not through blood, but through respect, care, and the understanding that we all have tender places that need healing. At a small gathering once, a close friend asked me, "Evelyn, if you could go back to when you were 17, would you change anything?" I sipped my tea and shook my head. No, because without those days I wouldn't know how strong I really am. And maybe I wouldn't have learned how to love myself. I used to live to be seen, acknowledged, loved. Now, I live because I deserve a full life, unconditionally, without needing anyone else's validation. I hung a simple frame on the blank wall in my living room. Not a certificate or diploma, but a handwritten quote I crafted on handmade paper. "You are enough, always were, always will be." Every time I come home late, every time I feel overwhelmed, I look at that quote, and I remember what I've walked through. I wasn't born into a perfect home, but I've learned how to build one for myself, with bricks made of effort, self-respect, and a heart that no longer longs for what's behind me. Evelyn's story is proof that being born into a lack of love doesn't mean you're doomed to suffer forever. Though she was never truly seen by her family, she walked through the darkness alone and built a strong, successful life. Evelyn didn't choose resentment, she chose growth. She learned that true family is built on respect and unconditional love, and in the end, it was her resilience and self-worth that brought her lasting happiness. What do you think about Evelyn's journey? Have you ever felt the same way she did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, emotional stories about family and self-discovery. I was lying on the couch, my laptop open but no longer useful, eyes locked on the text that had just appeared on my phone screen. Vic, just a heads up, so you're not surprised. The guest list for this weekend's party is final. There isn't enough space, so we had to cut a few people. Hope you understand. The message was from Noah, my younger brother who had just completed his 18-month military service. And me, the one who sent dozens of care packages all the way to his base in Germany, who stayed up through time zone differences just to talk to him when he was feeling down, was now cut from his welcome home party. I stared at the screen, waiting for another text. Something like, "Just kidding, you're a VIP," but nothing. Just a cold, matter-of-fact exclusion. No explanation. No guilt. It felt like something dropped to the bottom of my chest. A quiet impact. Not loud enough to scream, but heavy enough to make my chest feel like it was weighed down with stone. I had been there for him through all those months when our parents were too busy or too clueless to know how to talk to a son stationed in a strange land, filled with sleepless nights and grueling drills. I was the one who helped Mia, his fiancée, plan a surprise video call on his second birthday away from home. I designed the digital invitation for their engagement party, tweaking every detail because Mia wanted it to look professional. And now, I'd been crossed off like an extra guest. An outsider. Unable to swallow the sting of being shut out, I called Dad. He'd been excitedly talking about this party for weeks, the menu, the live music, even renting a huge projector for a highlight reel. The phone rang twice before he picked up. His voice was hoarse, familiar. "Hello, Vic? What's going on, sweetheart?" I didn't beat around the bush. Noah just texted me. "I'm not on the guest list." "You knew about this, didn't you?" There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh, the kind I knew all too well, the kind he used when he didn't want to deal with something. Vic, don't overreact. It's just a family get-together. Space is tight, you know that." I bit my lip. My voice stayed calm, but every word felt like it was slicing into me. Not enough space? I just saw Noah's Instagram post with over 80 names on the list. Distant relatives, elementary school friends, co-workers he's known for a few months. And me? I'm his sister. Dad cleared his throat, sounding awkward. Those people RSVP'd early. It's hard to take anyone off now. Don't take it personally, sweetheart. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Don't take it personally? I was there when he was a nervous wreck in his first uniform. I stayed up all night talking him through rough training days. And now you're telling me not to overreact? Another sigh, like I was the one making a scene. Don't make this into a thing. It's just a party. One night. I didn't respond. I could only hear my heart pounding like it was warning me something was about to crack. I hung up, my hand trembling. My eyes stayed on the phone screen where Noah's "not enough space" message still sat unblinking. My fingers began scrolling through old photos and messages. His grateful texts when I sent homemade cookies. The heart emojis when I had his favorite takeout delivered. Those old messages saying, "Without you, I probably would have given up already," now felt like a distant dream. I set the phone down and stood up, my heart echoing with silent noise. I wasn't angry at Noah for crossing me off. I was angry because he didn't care. Because he didn't see anything wrong with it. And most of all, I was angry at myself for always being there, too ready, too trusting, too quick to forgive. I looked out the window. The sky was a dull gray, heavy like my chest. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for permission to exist anymore. I sat frozen on the couch, my hand wrapped around a coffee cup gone cold. Dad's words still echoed in my mind like a stuck recording. It's just a gathering. Just a gathering? The way he said it sounded so light, like I was overreacting, like my disappointment wasn't worth acknowledging. But how could I not be hurt when my own family so easily deemed me unworthy of being there? I got up and walked into my small home office, where stacks of design drafts still covered the desk. I opened the drawer and pulled out a small USB stick. On it was the design file for the Welcome Home Noah poster, something I'd created for free without being asked, because I thought it was what family did. I remembered staying up until nearly 2 a.m. just to find the exact font Mia liked, something delicate, elegant, with soft curves. She sent me a heart emoji after I emailed the final draft. Noah never said thank you, but I didn't mind then. I thought, if it made him happy, if things went smoothly, that was enough. I remembered when he texted me at 2 p.m. during a training break, "Sis, my car broke down. I don't know what to do." I didn't ask questions. I just transferred $500 with a note. "Fix your car? Don't stress." The first time he left for basic training, Mom didn't know how to pack his bags, and Dad was tied up at the repair shop. I was the one who ran all over town to find the right military-grade backpack, printed his packing checklist, and woke up at 4 a.m. to drive him to the military station, over an hour away. And now, I wasn't even invited to the day he came back. I turned on my computer and opened a photo folder labeled Noah's Journey. Everything from his awkward first uniform photo to screenshots of our video calls, his eyes shining even in some makeshift room somewhere in Europe. A while later, my phone buzzed. A message from Mia. "Vic, I know Noah texted you. Honestly, I was surprised you weren't invited too, but please don't take it personally. Noah just didn't want the party to get too crowded." I read her words as my heart turned colder by the second. Not because of what she said, but because of how they talked about me, like I was some burden to the atmosphere. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I shut my laptop and walked to the window. Night had fully fallen. The streetlights glowed as I watched silhouettes move along the quiet street in West Portland, the neighborhood I'd lived in for nearly 6 years. Over 1,000 miles from my parents' house, but I was always the one who came back when they needed something. When Dad had to replace the entire plumbing system, I paid the bill. When Mom needed someone to take her to her medical appointments, I booked the flights, rented the car, and arranged the schedule. I was always willing. But now, I started asking myself, how many times have I given without ever receiving? How many times have I sacrificed just because I thought I was supposed to? Because I was the good older sister? I didn't know how long I stood by the window before the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Dad. "Vic, please, don't overthink this. It's not worth getting upset about. Please understand, Noah. He just wants a peaceful evening, no tension." I let out a laugh, the first of the day, but it had no joy in it. No tension? So I'm the tension? I'm the one who ruins my own brother's peace just by being there? I walked over to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. The old pair of snow boots I bought last year but never got to use sat quietly in the corner. I opened my laptop and typed into the search bar, "Solo ski trip, Colorado." Images of cozy cabins, tucked into pine forests, snow-covered landscapes, and crackling fireplaces filled the screen. In that moment, I knew I wasn't going to wait for anyone to invite me. I would write my own plans. If they thought I wasn't important enough to be at that party, then I didn't need to sit here and endure being treated like an afterthought. I was no longer the older sister always behind the scenes, sacrificing in silence. Not this time. Not ever again. The next morning, I left my apartment earlier than usual. The sting of being left out still lingered, but instead of sitting at home stewing in anger, I grabbed my bag and headed out, stopping by the corner cafe I usually visited on weekends, Hazel's Brew. The morning air in Portland still carried the crisp chill of early spring. The cafe was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon waffles and soft jazz music that helped ease my heart a little. I ordered my usual, an unsweetened almond milk latte and an apple tart, then picked a spot near the window, where the sunlight landed just right on the glossy wooden table. I was about to check the news on my phone when the voices of two people behind me grew louder than usual. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, really I wasn't, but when I heard my name, my heart froze. What's her last name again, Victoria? Didn't see her name on the guest list for Noah's welcome back party. That was Lila's voice. My cousin, who always had a way of speaking that sounded half accidental, half deliberate. So others would hear. Maybe she did something to upset Noah. I mean, who crosses their own sister off a guest list? I heard she used to be kind of controlling. I held my breath. The second voice was Jenna, another cousin who once messaged me to design a birthday invitation for her son, then forgot to say thank you. Maybe she stopped helping with money? I heard she used to wire him some cash when he was in a bind, but now? Radio silence. Yeah, can't really blame Noah. Who wants someone bringing drama to a party? It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. My ears burned, my throat tightened. I forced myself not to turn around, biting my lip hard and staring at my latte. Every word they said slicing through what little belief I had left in my family. I don't know how long they kept talking. I just know that when I stood up, my coffee was still full, but I felt completely empty. I walked out like a ghost, my hand gripping the strap of my bag so tightly it hurt. What they said wasn't just gossip. It was confirmation. In their eyes, I was the extra. I walked without direction, not realizing where I was going, until I found myself in front of the small bookstore at the end of the street. The one Noah and I used to visit the summer before his senior year, back when he was still that shy little brother who clung to me in crowds. I remembered that afternoon, how he picked a book about military history and looked at me with sparkling eyes. If I join the army someday, would you support me? I hugged him and said, I'll always be behind you. And in all the years that followed, I kept that promise. What I didn't expect was that by the time Noah came back, my place had been replaced by careless whispers and suspicious looks from our own relatives. I pulled out my phone and reopened the texts from Dad, Mia, and Noah. All read, none replied. And I realized none of them thought leaving me off the guest list was wrong. They just thought I was being sensitive, making a fuss, being difficult. I didn't need an apology. I needed respect. And that, clearly, was something they had never truly given me. I returned home with a decision both clear and firm. I would not let myself be labeled as the difficult one ever again. If they thought I didn't deserve to be part of their celebration, then I didn't need to be the one fixing problems I was no longer a part of. I opened my laptop and returned to the travel booking page I'd searched the night before. My cursor hovered over destinations like Aspen, Jackson Hole, before stopping at a place I never thought I'd go. White Pine Lodge, Wyoming. A wooden cabin nestled among pine trees, beside a frozen lake with endless snow-covered slopes. No noise, no judgment, no demands. I clicked book. At that moment, I didn't know what was waiting for me in Wyoming. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the forgotten one. That night, I sat alone on the living room floor, soft yellow light spilling onto the warm wooden floor, my empty suitcase open beside me like a void waiting to be filled. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the clock. I had just booked a ski trip to White Pine Lodge in Wyoming, a place I'd never been, never imagined would mark the beginning of my self-rescue. I didn't book economy class, not this time. I chose first class, and I didn't hesitate when I hit the payment button. If I'd spent years prioritizing everyone else's feelings, sweating over every little detail for parties that weren't even mine, then this time I would choose myself. Every single moment. The cabin I picked was a private one right by the frozen lake, with wide windows looking out at snow-covered mountains and a real wood-burning fireplace. It came with a full package. A private ski lesson, lift tickets, even a fine dining dinner at the resort restaurant. The total cost might make some people wince, but I didn't care. I was used to spending money on others. This time, I was investing in myself. Friday morning, I arrived at the airport early, wearing a thick, cream-colored coat and the beige knit hat I bought last year but never got to wear. Sitting in the first-class lounge, hands wrapped around a hot cup of tea, watching planes glide past the windows, I felt a lightness, as if I'd just cut the cord tying me to years of heavy expectation. The flight to Wyoming was smooth. The flight attendants treated me like I was truly VIP, and maybe, for the first time in my life, I felt like I deserved that. When the plane landed in Jackson Hole, the biting cold made me shiver, but it was a good kind of cold, a cold that snapped me into clarity. Like my body was shedding every last trace of careless words, heavy silences, and looks that no longer saw me. The driver who picked me up was a middle-aged man named Hank, with salt and pepper beard and a warm voice. "First time at White Pine?" he asked while fastening his seatbelt. "Yes." I heard it's peaceful and beautiful, hoping it lives up to that. "Better than you'd expect," he smiled, squinting behind his sunglasses. "People come here to find themselves. Maybe that's what you're doing too?" I paused for a moment, then nodded gently. "Maybe I am." The road from the airport wound through snowy pine forests, wooden cabins scattered along the mountainside, like a holiday postcard. When we pulled up to the gate of White Pine Lodge, I couldn't breathe for a second. It was stunning. A main lodge built of wood and stone, snow-covered shingles on the roof, a soft plume of smoke curling from the chimney. It all looked like something out of a fairy tale. The receptionist, Tara, a woman about my age with a long braid and cheeks pink from the cold, greeted me with a warm smile. "You must be Victoria? Your cabin is ready. And here's a welcome glass of wine. We hope you have a wonderful stay." I took the glass of red wine, my hand trembling slightly from the cold. Or maybe from emotion? I wasn't sure. The cabin was tucked deep in the quietest part of the resort. When I stepped inside, the warmth from the fireplace made my cheeks flush. A bed with a fluffy down comforter, an armchair beside the fire, a small bookshelf with winter novels, and outside the window, a frozen lake glinting under the sunset. I set my suitcase down, sank into the thick wool rug, poured myself a glass of wine, and just sat, quietly. No phone notifications. No guilt-tripping messages. No one asking me to be the bigger person. Just me. And the kind of peace I'd dreamed about for so long. I opened my phone and posted a photo of the cabin with the caption, "Not on the list? Then make your own list." I scheduled it to go live 2 hours later, just when I knew the party back home would be starting, so they'd know I wasn't just missing. I chose to disappear with purpose and grace. That night, I sat by the fireplace with a book, occasionally looking up to watch the snow fall outside the window. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt, I had made the right choice. I had just poured myself another glass of red wine when my phone buzzed for the third time in less than 5 minutes. The screen showed Mom with the familiar 3 dots, like she was typing something so long it needed serious thought. I didn't bother opening it. Instead, I tucked my feet up on the armchair, pulled the soft fleece blanket over my legs, and brought the wine to my lips. The aroma held a hint of berries and oak. Warm, elegant, completely opposite to the chaos waiting in my inbox, just as I'd predicted. The moment my cabin photo post went live, right on schedule, the reactions from my family exploded like wildfire. The simple caption, "Not on the list? Then make your own list," paired with the image of me sitting by the fire, glass in hand, snow glowing through the window. Didn't need a tag or explanation, but everyone got it. And just like that, the message storm began. "Mom, Vic, what are you doing? Don't let your emotions make you act like this. Everyone was hoping you'd be there. Dad, this is Noah's celebration, not the time for theatrics." "Noah, are you serious? Posting that kind of photo and letting everyone gossip? What do you want?" I let out a soft laugh. "What do I want? I just want to be acknowledged. But clearly, that's still a luxury in my family. A few minutes later, another message popped up. From Mia, Noah's perfect fiancé, the one who had once thanked me profusely for helping plan their engagement party, and now sat silent as a statue while I was excluded from this welcome celebration. Mia, Victoria, I don't want to see you hurt. But things will only get worse if you keep this up. You're putting Noah in a tough spot. I set my wine down on the wooden table, leaned back in my chair, and watched the flames dance in the fireplace. Putting Noah in a tough spot? What about me? Have I ever been considered in any of this? But it didn't stop there. The next morning, when I posted a photo of golden waffles drizzled with syrup beside a steaming cup of coffee with the caption, "Cold air, hot coffee, and no one controls my mood anymore," the first phone call came in. Not from Mom, not from Noah, but from Aunt Lydia, my mom's sister, the one who always stayed helpfully neutral. I didn't answer, but a voicemail followed immediately. "Victoria, I know you're upset, but you don't have to go so public with this. People will think you're turning against your family. Honestly, sweetie, come back, explain calmly, and let's all celebrate together. Don't escalate things over hurt feelings." I went still. No one asked why I was left off the guest list. No one wondered if I was okay. They were too busy worrying about the family's image. Too busy smoothing things over. Too busy keeping things nice. And me? Just a name crossed out, then blamed for not behaving appropriately. The more I thought about it, the colder I felt. Not because of the snow, but because of the blinding truth. I wasn't overreacting. They just weren't used to me standing up for myself. I set my phone down, opened the camera, and snapped a photo from the cabin window, the frozen lake reflecting the sunlight like crystal. I didn't write a caption, just posted it with a thumbs up and smile emoji. Almost instantly, a college friend commented, "Living your best life, Vic. I wish I had the guts to cut ties with people who don't deserve space in my life." A former coworker wrote, "I was once the shadow in my own family." "You're inspiring." I read every word, every emoji, and felt something strange stir in my chest. I wasn't alone. While my own family tried to make me feel like the problem, complete strangers could see my worth. That night, as the fire in the hearth faded to embers, I reopened my phone and found another message from Noah. "Noah, if you had just come, none of this would have happened. I really don't understand why you had to turn this into some big lesson." I quietly typed a few words, then deleted them. Finally, I replied, "This lesson isn't for you. It's for me, and I won't forget it." I hit send. This time, I didn't feel torn. I didn't feel regret. I just felt peace. And I knew I had taken another step out of that old cycle called endure, to be accepted. I was sitting on the wooden floor by the cabin window, wrapped in a blanket and sipping hot cocoa when the phone rang again. It was Carla, my cousin on Mom's side, the only one in our extended family I still kept in touch with, because she was smart enough to stay out of the drama and kind enough never to hurt others for her own gain. I picked up, and before I could say anything, her voice burst through, a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Vic, oh my God, sit down. You will not believe what just happened." I took a sip of cocoa, smiling softly. "Let me guess. Someone spilled the cake, or Noah said something dumb in front of Grandma?" No, this is way beyond that." I raised an eyebrow, sensing chaos was about to unfold. Carla's voice dropped to a whisper, like she was hiding in a corner to call me. Mia walked out, in the middle of the party, right after throwing a mocktail all over Noah. I nearly spilled my drink. "What?" "Yeah, turns out Noah got caught flirting with Rachel Myers, his ex from high school, the one Mia swore was never allowed in shared spaces." I leaned on my knee, heart racing. Rachel Myers. That name alone used to set me off, even if it was just a harmless birthday comment on Facebook. And Noah? Never really knew how to set boundaries. Mia really left? Not just left, Vic. Before storming out, she told everyone, I was stupid to think you were actually a grown-up. Then bam, mocktail all over his crisp white shirt. Everyone froze. I didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. And Noah? After Mia left, he lost it, punched the brick wall by the door. Guess what happened? Broken hand? Bingo, right wrist. Swollen like a grapefruit. They had to call an ambulance. Your mom was sobbing, saying everything's falling apart. Your dad ran around looking for help, but half the guests had already quietly left. I got up, walked to the kitchen, set down my cocoa, and leaned on the counter. The chaotic puzzle in my mind was coming together into something almost pitifully comedic. Carla wasn't done. Oh, and Uncle Pete, you remember? The one always bragging about whale watching in Alaska? He got so drunk he slipped and face-planted right into the punch bowl. I burst out laughing. No way. I swear. But the best part, Grandma, wanna guess what she said? I stayed quiet, sensing the punchline would land hard. Carla took a deep breath, then lowered her voice like she was sharing a golden secret. She looked Noah straight in the face, hand bandaged, shirt soaked in punch, and said, You're paying the price for cutting out the one person in this family who truly loved you unconditionally. Don't expect forgiveness from the heavens when you erase your own blood. I froze. I had always thought Grandma sided with my parents, always choosing peace over justice. But today, she said that straight to Noah's face? Carla continued. She stood up, grabbed her cane, and walked out like a queen. No one said a word. Vic, you weren't there, but you were still the center of tonight. I walked back to the couch, holding the phone in both hands. I don't even know what to say. Carla giggled. You don't have to say anything. You didn't need to be there for them to realize how important you are. They wrecked it all by themselves. And this time, you're not the one paying the price. I looked out the window. Snow was still falling softly. The pine forest outside my cabin stood silent, untouched. Inside and out, it was all still and calm. And somehow, in the chaos of a party I wasn't invited to, I felt free. I had just stepped out of the hot tub on the cabin's porch, towel wrapped around my shoulders, still scented with herbal oil, when my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Noah. If you had been there, none of this would have happened. I stared at the words, my finger hovering between two impulses: delete it immediately or save it to remind myself that some things, once said, can't be unsaid. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat down on the wooden chair beside the outdoor fireplace, watching snow gather on the pine branches, feeling a strange mix of bitterness and quiet amusement. They had made me the family's shield for years, only to panic when I stopped standing there to absorb their fallout. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. Can you stop being childish? Noah is a wreck and your father and I are dealing with everything. Why is it that when the family needs you, you choose to disappear? I took a deep breath, trying not to let the anger boil over. I'd heard those lines my whole life. When we need you, you're not there. Why can't you be more like your brother and just take a step back? Family means sacrifice. But this time, I was different. I no longer wanted to carry the weight of roles they'd assigned to me without my consent. Then came a missed call from Dad. When I didn't pick up, he left a voicemail. Victoria, I don't understand why you're blowing everything up over not being invited to a party. Your mother's been crying all night, and Noah's in pain, physically and emotionally. You're an adult. You should know this is when you need to come back. I pressed my lips together, eyes focused on the screen that lit up with another new message. This time from Mia. Vic, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm honestly freaking out. I don't know what to say to Noah, to his parents, to our friends. Everyone's looking at me like I ruined everything. If you could just talk to Noah, even for a moment, maybe he'd calm down. A shiver ran down my spine. They were blaming me. Not one person asked why I wasn't at the party. Not one of them considered that maybe I stayed away because I was tired. Tired of being the one to fix what no one else ever tried to keep whole. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. Not being there to clean up the mess doesn't mean I caused it. Then I got up, walked into the cabin, poured myself a cup of peppermint tea, and opened the window. The cold air swept in, carrying the scent of pine and melting snow. I knew this for certain. If I went back, I'd end up cleaning up the pieces again. The one they never saw as important. Until everything fell apart. And the most ridiculous part was, I didn't do anything. Noah flirted with his ex. Mia walked out. My parents lost control. And me. I simply wasn't there, and yet somehow became the center of the fallout in their eyes. I picked up my phone and scrolled through all the messages, pausing on Mom's, "Can you stop being childish?" I pressed and held, selected forward, sent it to myself, and titled the conversation, "Why I'm Not Going Back." Then I went into settings and muted the family group chat. I needed silence. Not to forget, but to remember exactly why I walked away. As night fell, the firelight danced across the wooden walls again. I opened the book I brought, a novel about healing, and read slowly, page by page. No messages, no guilt-tripping voices, just the wind brushing the cabin roof and words whispering of freedom. And I knew, no matter how hard they tried to pull me back, I wasn't in that old place anymore. I had stepped out of my old role, the silent endurer, the peacemaker, the one who was never allowed to be angry, hurt, or say enough. I woke up to sunlight peeking through the wooden blinds, casting a soft golden glow across the ash-gray blanket. The wind whispered outside the window, mingled with the sound of snow falling on the roof, and my heart felt calm. My phone sat quietly on the nightstand, just a lifeless metal block I'd switched to airplane mode the night before, after reading Mia's final message and silently blocking them all. Noah, Mom, Dad, and every relative who thought they had the right to judge. I didn't feel guilty. On the contrary, for the first time in years, I felt at peace. After a simple breakfast of toast and strong coffee, I suited up for skiing and stepped outside. The view unfolded like a painting, towering pines draped in snow, sunlight streaking down the white slopes, and in the distance, a group of people laughing as they strapped on skis. That morning's lesson was led by Sam, a blonde instructor with a bright smile and pale blue eyes that held something understanding. He gently adjusted my stance, encouraged me every time I stumbled or wobbled in the snow. "Don't fight the slope, Victoria, just relax, trust your body. It knows the way." I laughed after my third fall, snow clinging to the back of my jacket. "That sounds like a life lesson." "Maybe it is," Sam winked. "I've met a lot of people who came here to escape something, but once they dared to glide down that first hill, they realized what they really needed was freedom." I looked at him, feeling something catch in my chest. He probably had no idea how close to home that landed. In the afternoon, I joined a snowshoeing tour around the frozen lake. The guide, Linda, was a warm, witty woman in her 50s. Beside me walked a couple from Seattle. Mark and Jamie, probably in their 40s, spending their annual winter break at White Pine Lodge. "First time traveling alone?" Jamie asked as we paused by an old pine tree. I nodded, a bit shy. "Yeah, and first time not carrying other people's expectations." Mark chuckled, pointing to the circle of footprints in the snow. "Then you're headed the right way. Some trips aren't about going toward someone, they're about getting away." That evening, I stopped by the bar at the lodge. Soft, amber lighting, acoustic guitar under a wooden roof, and people huddled close to the fire, sipping drinks and swapping stories. Sam saw me and waved me over to a table where a few guests had gathered. I sat down, ordered a glass of red wine, and minutes later was laughing out loud at a Canadian guy telling the story of his epic wipeout on last year's slope. No one asked where I was from. No one pried into why I was alone. And I realized, sometimes, the best thing a stranger can do for you is not try to unpack your past. That night, I returned to the cabin with cheeks flushed from the wine and the cold, but my heart was warm. I took off my coat, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the fireplace. The flames danced, the wood crackled, and I pulled out the journal I brought from home. Flipping to the first empty page, I wrote my first sentence in months. Freedom isn't running away. It's refusing to return to places that hurt you. I closed the notebook, placed it on the table, and for the first time on this trip, I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with a flood of missed notifications, but I scrolled past them all without opening a single one. Instead, I opened my settings and kept the block list intact. So I didn't want another excuse. I didn't need another explanation for why I was excluded. I had chosen myself, and that choice had never felt clearer. I picked up my phone, opened the camera, and snapped a photo through the cabin window. The moonlight reflecting on the frozen lake, tree shadows stretching across the snow. I wrote the caption. I didn't disappear. I just started living where I belong. No tags. No expectations. Just me, finally being me. I sat on the cabin balcony, a wool robe wrapped around me, feet resting on a stool lightly dusted with melted snow, hands curled around a steaming cup of coffee. The sun was rising, painting the distant mountains in gold, casting a gentle shimmer through the pine branches like a soft blanket. No more message notifications. No more missed calls. Only the wind rustling through the trees and my heartbeat, steady and quiet in my chest. Like a rhythm of life I'd forgotten I still had. That morning, as I walked down to the front desk to ask about the shuttle back to the airport, I froze mid-step. I looked at the calendar hanging behind the counter, eyes landing on the red-circled Sunday, my planned departure date. I looked up and asked Tara, the receptionist, with a smile warm as hot cocoa. If I wanted to stay one more week, is the cabin still available? Tara didn't look surprised. She tilted her head and tapped a few keys. Lucky for you, it hasn't been booked yet. Want me to hold it for you? I nodded without hesitation. I wasn't afraid of going back. I just couldn't see a single reason to leave a place where I finally felt like myself. That afternoon, while sipping wine at the resort bar, I got a message from Carla, the one cousin I still spoke to after everything. Your mom's organizing a family meeting next week, apparently to clear the air. Just a heads up, you're on the guest of honor list. I leaned back in my chair, watching the golden light sparkle through my wineglass. A slow smile crept across my face. Not from anger, but from knowing the game all too well. An intervention masked as concern, but really just a performance. A collective defense in which I'd be pushed back into the role of the one who needs to understand. I typed a short reply and sent it to Carla. I'm too busy enjoying myself. Good luck with your mess. No exclamation mark. No fake warmth. Just a goodbye I wouldn't be taking back. Then I turned off the screen, flipped the phone face down on the table, and didn't touch it for the rest of the day. The next few days passed like a frozen stream in the woods, quiet and refreshing. I spent mornings skiing with Sam, afternoons walking the lake trails with familiar guests, and evenings back at the wooden table in the bar, listening to Mark's stories about getting lost on mountain hikes in Colorado. No one mentioned family. No one asked what I was running from. We were just people, living in the now with no need to explain the past. One weekend morning, sitting in the cabin reading, I realized days had gone by without me feeling like I had to be anywhere. I no longer felt guilty for not fixing everything. No longer felt heavy for not being on someone's list. I had once tried to fill every role. The dutiful daughter, the selfless sister, the woman who never let anyone down. But I'd learned this. Living for how others see you will always make you a blurry version of yourself. Now, I was just Victoria, the woman sipping coffee on a mountain, feeling the wind in her hair and the sunlight hitting a heart that had finally stopped breaking. I set the book aside, lifted my coffee, and stepped onto the balcony. The mountains stood still, solid, as if they too had known silent sorrow. I took a deep breath, listening to the sound inside my own chest. Calm. Grounded. I didn't know what would come after this trip, but I knew one thing for sure. I had found myself in the last place anyone thought I would. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone erase my name from my own story. Again. From that trip, I learned one thing. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to stay and fight, it's to walk away and finally free yourself. I used to think I had to be there, to keep my family from falling apart. Turns out, my leaving is what made them look in the mirror. In that cold, quiet place, I found the voice that had been buried for too long. And now, I don't beg to be acknowledged. I define my worth in the power of my absence. What do you think about Victoria's decision? Should she go back or keep following her own path? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful family stories. I once swore I would never go back to that house again. But then, one evening in early December, when my little girl looked at me with those wide, hopeful eyes and asked, "Mom, do I have grandparents?" I knew my heart couldn't stay silent any longer. My daughter Lily was only 8, still believed in magic, still thought Christmas was the time when even the most distant families could find their way back to each other. I stayed quiet for a long moment before nodding, though inside, I felt like I had just stepped over an old, rusted, thorn-covered boundary. I got divorced 3 years ago. My mother never called. My father only sent a cold one-line message. Everyone shares some blame in a breakup. I thought that made it perfectly clear. At that moment, I was no longer part of their world and they were no longer part of mine. But Lily didn't know any of that. To her, they were still grandparents. 2 people she believed would be overjoyed to see their granddaughter knocking on their door on Christmas Eve, carrying a little box of cookies and a bright smile. I didn't have the heart to take that dream from her. 3 weeks before the holiday, she asked me, "Do you think they'll like me?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I hesitated, then replied, "Of course they will." But my throat tightened, like I had just traded a piece of my truth so she could have a few days of hope. I told myself I was doing it for Lily, that maybe, just maybe, this one time they'd see her the way I do, sweet, creative, thoughtful beyond her years. Maybe I was wrong about them? We set out on the morning of December 24. I had spent the entire week preparing, scraping together every dollar from my savings, picking up extra shifts to buy Lily a red velvet dress with white lace trim and a new pair of flats. She carefully wrote out handmade cards for everyone, Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt, Uncle, each one with uneven printed letters full of love, decorated with crayon drawings. I saw her clutching them to her chest like she was afraid someone might tear them. "Do you think they'll hang my drawings on the wall?" she asked, as I tied her bow in front of the mirror. I smiled, smoothed her hair, and said, "Of course they will, sweetheart." My old SUV rolled along snow-covered roads, Christmas lights twinkling through the windows, but all I felt was a tightness in my chest. That house didn't remind me of warmth or laughter. It was a place where judgment always came softly, like a cold wind, but strong enough to freeze the heart. When we arrived, Martha, my mother, opened the door. She looked the same, hair tightly curled, lips painted deep red, a smile that never reached her eyes. "Patricia, long time no see," she said, then turned to Lily. "So this is her?" She leaned down, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder, like she was inspecting a package that had just been delivered. "I'm Lily," my daughter said brightly, her cheeks rosy from the cold. My mother replied, her eyes flicking from the salt stains on Lily's shoes to the mud-streaked hem of her dress. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The Christmas tree sparkled in the corner like something out of a home magazine, not a single ornament out of place. My father, Henry, sat in his usual armchair by the fireplace, the TV on low, holding a cup of coffee. He didn't stand, just gave a slight nod, like someone acknowledging a bank statement. "Didn't think you two would actually show," he said, his tone flat like a weather forecast. Lily shyly waved, "Hi, Grandpa." Her little hand, tucked inside a cream-colored knit glove, trembled slightly. He just looked at her. Papa said nothing. I stood still, my forced smile struggling not to shake. I had prepared myself for this. But nothing really prepares you for the cold indifference of people who used to be home. But Lily remained steady. She stepped forward, holding her little paper bag of cards, and whispered, "I brought gifts for everyone." Her voice was clear, like a tiny bell, soft but strangely loud in the museum-like silence of the room. I looked at her, my heart bursting, part pain, part pride, part hope. Just a sliver. She laid each card on the coffee table like sacred treasures. The one for Grandma Martha had a hand-cut pink heart glued on. Grandpa Henry's had a drawing of a Christmas tree, and underneath, 2 people holding hands. I didn't dare ask who the second figure was, but my heart sank when I realized it looked a lot like me. The daughter he once called the biggest disappointment of his life. "I made one for Uncle Peter, too," Lily said, handing a card to the man sitting across the room. Peter, my younger brother, had left home at 20, only recently returning after a failed marriage. He took the card, nodded, but didn't open it. "Thanks," he muttered, his voice dry. I looked at him, caught his eyes quickly turning away, as if the past was still alive in every corner of this cold, polished room. Lily didn't notice. She continued her tiny mission, walking over to my cousin Chloe, who was lounging on the sofa scrolling on her phone. When Lily handed her the card, she didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Oh, thanks, kid," before returning to her screen, the tapping of her nails louder than my breaking heart. I sat, frozen, clutching a lukewarm cup of tea, too afraid to speak. Part of me was furious, part of me afraid, but more than anything, I felt powerless. This house, these people, still the same, everything in its place yet somehow completely hollow. After she had handed out every card, Lily returned to sit beside me, her eyes still bright, whispering, "Mom, I think Grandma's about to read my card." I looked toward my mother. She held the card in her hand, but instead of opening it, she placed it down next to the crystal lamp and turned away like it was a piece of junk mail. At that moment, my father put his coffee cup down, walked toward the tree, and rummaged underneath it. He pulled out a neatly wrapped square box, shiny blue paper with a bold red ribbon. He held it up, turned to Lily, and handed it over without much emotion. "This one's for you," he said evenly. "Your name's on it." Lily's mouth dropped open. She reached out, accepting the gift with eyes that lit up like catching a falling star. A flicker of hope sparked in me. Maybe, just maybe, he had changed his mind? She sat down on the rug, carefully peeling back the tape, unfolding each crease. I could hear every tear of paper, every breath she held. As she opened the lid, the whole room seemed to pause. Then, her face froze. The smile slowly faded. Her small shoulders stiffened. Lily reached into the box, feeling around in empty space. She looked up at me, eyes uncertain. The gift box was empty. I was speechless. No note, no toy, no explanation. Just an empty box, wrapped in shiny paper and bright promises. And then my father chuckled. A short, cold, cruel sound. "Kids these days, always dreaming too big," he said, looking at Lily like she had made some ridiculous mistake. "Life doesn't hand you things just for showing up." It felt like the air had turned to stone around me. Lily hadn't cried yet, but her eyes were shimmering. I was about to speak when Chloe smirked, dropped her phone on the table, and said, with a biting tone, "She's just like her mom, always thinking being pitiful means people owe you something." I turned my head, my gaze sharp as stone. "Chloe, that's enough." "Oh, come on, did I lie?" she shrugged. "Patricia, why did you even come back? To let this poor kid believe that families are full of magic?" Lily said nothing, but I saw her hands tighten around the empty box, hugging it to her chest like she still hoped something warm, something real, might be inside. I wanted to pull her into my arms and walk away from that place forever. But I also knew, if I did, I'd be teaching her that every hurt should be buried, that silence is the answer to pain. I had lived like that for over 30 years, and I swore I wouldn't let Lily learn the same lesson. She looked up at me, her eyes wet but not breaking. I saw her swallow her tears, in a way that hurt more than if she had sobbed. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered. I still have a gift for Grandpa." And right then, I knew this wasn't over. Not here, not today. Lily remained still, holding the empty gift box as if it might become something else if she just waited a little longer. Her eyes no longer sparkled the way they did when she first walked into the house, but something inside them hadn't completely faded. A small flame, weak but stubborn to the end. I leaned down beside her, about to wrap her in a hug, but Lily shook her head gently. She set the box aside and reached into her coat pocket. I felt my heart tighten. When she pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper, holding it with both hands like it was a treasure, the entire room fell into silence. "Grandpa," her voice was light as air, but clear, "I have a gift for you." My father, Henry, was still holding his coffee cup. He froze for a moment, raised an eyebrow, and leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of surprise and sarcasm. "A gift for me?" he smirked. "Hope it's not one of your mom's lectures." I clenched my hands together, trying to stay calm. But Lily didn't flinch. She stepped forward, both hands still extended, trembling slightly but steady. "I made it myself. It took 3 days to finish," Lily said. Her eyes locked on his like she was speaking to a friend, not someone who had just given her an empty box. Chloe, Peter, and my mother all turned to look. No one said a word. Henry slowly set his coffee down and reached out to take the paper. I held my breath. He unfolded it with one hand, his face showing no emotion. But as his eyes scanned the inside of the paper, something seemed to shift. I couldn't tell what it was, just that his shoulders stiffened and the familiar furrow in his brow vanished. His gaze softened, no longer sharp as usual. Instead, there was a flicker of confusion, like he was seeing something from a life long past, a memory that hadn't fully faded. No one spoke. The ticking of the wall clock suddenly became strangely loud. I couldn't see the paper from where I sat, but I saw how he looked at it, as if it had reminded him of something important he'd forgotten for too long. He stood up, still holding the paper. His steps weren't quick or firm, but there was something different in every movement. "Dad?" my mother called, surprised. He didn't answer, just walked out of the room, down the hallway toward the kitchen, and disappeared behind the oak door. No door slam, no explanation. Peter frowned. Chloe looked at me and raised an eyebrow, as if waiting for an answer I didn't have. I turned to Lily. She stood still, hands clasped, eyes still fixed on the door where Henry had vanished. "Mom," she asked softly, "did I do something wrong?" I knelt beside her, pulling her into my arms. "No, sweetheart. You did the right thing. You're braver than I am." Lily didn't say anything more. She just gave a small nod and leaned her head on my shoulder. I didn't need to ask to know her heart was swirling with unanswered questions. I didn't know what my father saw in that paper. But later that evening, while I packed our things and Lily folded old wrapping paper, I found her little drawing, a duplicate she made, just in case the original got ruined. It was a crayon picture, an old man sitting at a long wooden table next to a smiling blonde girl. On the table was an apple pie, the kind my mother used to bake for the holidays, before everything turned cold. At the bottom, Lily had written in big rounded letters, "I hope you'll be happy again. Mom says you used to laugh a lot." I didn't know if he read those words, but I knew if anything could reach my father's heart, frozen for decades, it was the kind of pure sincerity Lily had given, expecting nothing in return, just hoping someone would remember how to love. And sometimes, just a simple reminder like that is enough to awaken a part of us we thought was lost forever. We didn't see Henry return to the living room that entire evening, not once. Not when everyone moved to the dining table with the usual overcooked turkey, not when my mother poured wine and told stories no one really listened to. Not even when Lily quietly picked up stray bits of wrapping paper and carefully folded them, as if trying to patch up a torn day. No one brought up what happened. No one asked how Lily felt, and no one looked at me with even a hint of empathy, as if staying silent and pretending hard enough would make the truth fade away like morning fog. Chloe stayed glued to her phone. Peter did the dishes like a machine. My mother said goodnight in her usual flat tone, then closed her bedroom door like it was any other Christmas night. But it wasn't, not at all. I looked at Lily, curled up in her blanket on the sofa, hugging the same old teddy bear she took on every trip. Her wide eyes stared into the hallway where Henry had disappeared. I didn't need to ask what she was waiting for, and as much as I wanted to comfort her, I couldn't promise he'd come back, because truthfully, I didn't believe he would. The next morning, snow still fell softly. The sun hadn't risen high yet, but I was already up, packing in silence. I didn't tell anyone we were leaving, just left a brief note on the kitchen table. Thank you for having us, Patricia and Lily. Lily didn't ask why we were leaving early. She just walked beside me quietly, her new black shoes sinking slightly into the thin snow covering the stone path. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk, opened the passenger door for her, and started the car. Lily looked back at the house through the window, her clear eyes, once untouched by disappointment, now quietly searching. We didn't talk much on the drive home, just soft music from the radio, blending with the rhythmic sound of the windshield wipers. I thought about asking her about the drawing, why she chose to make it, but I stopped myself. Some things, I realized, don't need to be put into words. She had given him the most genuine gift, one of memory, of reminder, of a piece of the past long forgotten. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I sat by the window of our small city apartment. No thick snow, no trees wrapped in sparkling lights, but it felt safe. I thought about my father, a man I had only ever seen as strict, harsh, and distant. Did he keep the drawing? Or throw it away the moment he left the room? I didn't know. Maybe I never would. Until 3 days later. When I opened the door to grab the mail like I always did, there was a small box on the doorstep. No return address, just 4 neat handwritten words. For Lily. I brought it inside, my heart racing in a strange way. Lily was coloring at the table, and her eyes lit up when I handed her the box. "Who's it from, Mom?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't know, but open it." Inside was a small wooden music box, painted brown, its details delicately hand-carved. When Lily turned the crank on the side, the melody of Edelweiss began to play. Gentle, soft, and so unexpected it gave me chills. There was a small note tucked underneath, just one messy line of handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me of her." No signature, no other clue, but I knew. I knew exactly who had written it. No need for proof, no need for confirmation. Lily held the music box to her chest, her eyes suddenly softer than usual. "Mom, do you think Grandpa remembered?" she asked quietly. I sat down beside her and nodded. "I think he did, sweetheart. You helped him remember." Lily said nothing else. She just sat there, turned the little crank once more, and listened as the melody filled the quiet apartment. I didn't know how much my father had changed, but I knew that in some small moment, Lily had reached the part of him that could still feel, still remember, still listen. And that alone made the trip worth it. Since the music box appeared, Lily seemed to have something of her own to hold on to. She didn't talk much about it, didn't ask questions, only placed the little box beside her bed every night, turned the crank once, and listened quietly. The song Edelweiss played gently, like the final breath of the day, touching the silence of our small home and softening everything heavy. I didn't press her, partly because I wanted to preserve that delicate feeling, as if touching it might break the spell, partly because I was caught in my own circle of unspoken thoughts. Someone had sent that music box. Someone had written that note. And I knew. No one but my father had that shaky, blocky, awkward handwriting. I had grown up seeing it in his books, in the notes taped to the fridge, always that same handwriting, Always that same feeling, clear, but distant. Only this time, there was no distance. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea, still turning the note over in my mind. Thank you for reminding me of her. Her, someone Lily had never met, but who lived in her heart through my stories. Evelyn. My mother never spoke of Evelyn. As I grew up, she was like a name crossed out of the past. My father rarely mentioned his mother either, except in passing comments at dinner when he couldn't hold back his complaints. My mother would have never put up with this lifestyle, or she taught me to endure, not to be soft like this. And yet Lily, somehow, had brought back the memory of someone this entire family had tried to forget. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, the phone rang. A strange number. I almost didn't answer, but my hand moved on its own. Patricia? A deep male voice, with hesitation. Yes, who's this? It's Peter. I was surprised. Peter? What's going on? He paused for a few seconds, then spoke quickly, like he was afraid he might change his mind. Dad wants to see Lily. I nearly dropped the cup in my hand. What? He didn't explain much. Just said, if you're okay with it, bring her to the house Sunday afternoon. No one else knows, he wants to talk. I stood frozen for a while. All these years, my father had never once asked anyone to come. And now, he wanted to see Lily, the child he once handed an empty box. I said I'd think about it. I put the phone down and stared at the milk spreading across the table without moving. All that afternoon, I couldn't stop wondering, was this just another emotional trap? Would he repeat that same cruel indifference again? But then I looked at Lily. She was sitting by the window, coloring flowers on a card. It's what she always did to calm herself. And I realized maybe the right thing now wasn't shielding her by avoiding everything, but letting her face it, the way she had before. On Sunday, I drove Lily back to the old house. The snow had melted, leaving patches of ice on the sidewalk. I stopped at the end of the street, my heart full of hesitation. You ready? I asked. Lily nodded, her face more serious than usual. I think Grandpa needs someone to listen. I took her hand, warm and steady. When we stepped onto the porch, the door opened almost instantly. Not my mother, not Peter. It was Henry. No coat, no coffee in hand. Just an old man, eyes sunken, hair grayer than last time, and a face, finally, without annoyance or confusion. Hello, Lily, he said slowly. Hi, Grandpa, Lily replied, her smile small but real. He stepped back, opening the door wide. Come in. I have something I want to show you. And just like that, I knew. Something had changed. Not a fairy tale ending, but a door, gently opening. We stepped into a strangely quiet house. No sound from the TV, no clinking of dishes, no scent of food like usual. The house was still tidy, but today something felt softer, as if the old harshness had been gently wiped away by someone. Henry led Lily to the living room. I started to follow, but he turned to me, not harshly, just gently, and said, Patricia, your brother's in the backyard. Maybe you'd like to go out there for a bit? I nodded, a little surprised by how light his voice was today. Then I stepped back, letting the two of them have the room to themselves. Lily sat in the chair next to the fireplace where Henry usually read his newspaper every morning. He sat across from her, the music box placed on the table between them. Neither spoke for a while. Then Lily was the one who broke the silence. Do you listen to this song? She asked, gently turning the crank. The soft melody filled the air, each note falling like a drop of water into a still pond. Henry nodded, his eyes fixed on the spinning lid. I have. And I've kept it by my bedside these past few nights. Lily smiled. Mom said Grandma Evelyn liked this song. He took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. She did. She used to sing it while folding laundry. Her voice wasn't great, but I always thought it was the most beautiful sound in the world. The room went quiet again. Lily said nothing, just reached into her small backpack beside her. She pulled out a folded sheet of paper, the edges slightly wrinkled from being held too long. Then she handed it to him, her hand slightly trembling, but her gaze steady. "This is the original," she said. "The one I gave you on Christmas was a copy. I wanted to keep this one." He took it, unfolding each crease carefully, as if something delicate and precious lay inside. When the drawing fully opened, I saw him pause. From the window I could see part of the picture. 3 people, hand in hand. Henry, tall and broad, holding hands with a woman with curly hair and bright eyes. Evelyn. And between them, Lily, her face lifted in a smile. At the bottom of the drawing, a simple line of text read, "I hope one day you'll smile again, because Mom said Grandma used to make you laugh a lot." I saw Henry lean back in his chair, his eyes still on the paper, but this time there was no coldness or confusion, just stillness, and something quietly breaking behind his eyes. "She's been gone 10 years, he said, his voice raspy. "Since then, I haven't drawn, haven't sung, haven't told stories, I just kept going." Lily tilted her head. "But you still remember her." "I do." He smiled faintly, a crooked smile, as if surprised by the sound of it. "But I forgot how to show it. You reminded me." A long pause followed. Then Lily asked softly, "Do you ever think, if she could see you now, she'd be sad?" The question made Henry go silent, his hand on the paper tensed. Then relaxed. "Maybe she would," he said, quieter than a whisper. "And that's what scares me the most." I turned away, feeling the sting behind my eyes. Henry placed the drawing back on the table, right beside the music box. "Do you want to take this back?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "No, you keep it. I think she'd like being near you." Again, silence filled the room. But this time, it wasn't cold. It felt like a soft blanket wrapping around 2 souls, finally reaching each other after too many years apart. Before we left, Henry walked us all the way to the door. There were no empty words, just eyes that no longer looked away, and a hand that gently touched my shoulder for the first time as he whispered, "She's like her mother, but better." I nodded, unsure what to say. Lily turned back and waved. "Goodbye, Grandpa. Next time, I'll draw more for Grandma." He smiled, a real smile, and in that moment I realized, some gifts are never wrapped in shiny paper or tied with red bows. They are memories, hope, and quiet reminders that even the most weathered hearts can be stirred, if someone kind enough dares to reach in. A week after that afternoon, as Lily sketched in the soft golden sunlight spilling through our kitchen window, I received an envelope. Unsealed, no return address, only my name written neatly in handwriting I could never mistake. That same handwriting, awkward, firm, as if the writer was unfamiliar with expressing feelings in words, let alone capturing them in ink and paper. I stood still at the doorstep for a long time, holding something that felt both feather-light and heavy as stone. As I opened the letter, the music from Lily's little box echoed in my mind. Edelweiss, now more than a melody. A bridge between now and something long asleep in the past. There were only 3 lines inside. "Your mother was right about you. That little girl is wonderful. I hope you're doing okay." No greeting, no apology, no sign this was a beginning or an end. But that made it all the more powerful in its quiet way. I read it 3 times, each word ringing like an echo of something I had longed for. Not forgiveness, but recognition. He didn't say sorry, but he wrote, "That little girl is wonderful." And for me, that was enough to crack the wall I'd built over the years. Just enough for light to come through, even if only a sliver. I placed the letter in the drawer beside my bed, where I keep my most treasured things. A note Lily wrote in preschool saying she loved me, more than toast and strawberries. A birthday card from my grandmother when I turned 18. And now, this short note from a man who never knew how to show love, but finally spoke. That night, as I read Lily her bedtime story, she turned the music box's crank and looked up at me. "Mom," she asked softly, "do you think Grandpa is still sad?" I looked into her eyes, still as clear as that early winter morning when she stood in his living room, her hands trembling as she handed over a paper gift to a man she had only just met. "I think he's learning not to be," I said with a gentle smile. "Because of you." Lily didn't reply. She just held the music box to her chest the way children hold on to secrets, something warm adults may never fully understand. Since then, we haven't heard more from Henry. No calls, no texts, no sudden appearances like in the movies. But every weekend, a small package would arrive, never with a return address. The first was a pad of colored drawing paper, the next a set of high-quality watercolor pencils, with a note, "For your next pictures." Another time, it was a photo book of national parks Evelyn once loved visiting. And most recently, a hand-carved wooden picture frame, empty, unmarked. But I knew right away, it was meant for the Christmas drawing Lily gave him. Lily never asked why he sent them. She simply hung the picture by her desk and whispered, "Grandpa's smiling again, Mom." "I know it." I can't say for sure he truly smiled, but I know he's starting to remember. And that's the beginning of every change. The story between my father and me isn't a reconciliation. I don't expect a long conversation, a warm dinner, or overdue hugs. But when I read those few short lines, I understood he finally saw me. Not as a rebellious daughter or a burden, but as a mother raising a child who knows how to love, forgive, and create change with nothing more than kindness. Lily didn't just change him, she changed me too. She reminded me that sometimes what we need isn't victory or resolution, but simply space to be heard. A soft acknowledgement, light as air, yet strong enough to ease even the longest winters. And in our little apartment in the city, with no grand tree or church bells ringing, I knew that Christmas, for the first time in years, truly touched my heart, not because of what we received, but because of what we had the courage to give. Someone once asked me why I brought Lily back to that house, a place filled with heavy memories, a place I once swore never to return to. I didn't have a clear answer then, but now, looking back, I think I understand. I brought her back not to reopen old wounds, not to seek approval from the man who once made me feel invisible in my own home. I brought Lily back because she needed to see that the world isn't only made of beautiful corners. She needed to know that some people are not easy to love, not easy to reach, and not always easy to forgive. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Lily never wanted revenge. She didn't demand an apology or expect Henry to change. She didn't need praise. All she wanted was to give a genuine gift, a reminder of something once beautiful, and maybe still alive in someone long forgotten. When she gave him that drawing, simple as it seemed, filled with memory, hope, and unconditional affection, I saw what I hadn't been able to do for years, reach the remaining humanity in a man I thought time and loss had turned to stone. Henry didn't change overnight. He didn't become a warm grandpa or suddenly bring ice cream or tell fairy tales. But he listened in silence, sent small gifts, and most importantly, he showed he still felt. For someone like him, that alone was a big step. I remember his eyes when Lily said she hoped he'd smile again one day. For a second, I saw the man he used to be. The one who carried me on his shoulders in summer evenings, taught me how to toast bread without burning it, sat under the porch as my mother played the piano. That man never disappeared. He had just been buried under time, unspoken anger, and disappointment no one dared to name. And Lily, with a child's sketch and a simple line of hope, brought that memory back. Maybe that's why I believe now more than ever that kindness isn't weakness. It's the softest, most enduring kind of strength. A quiet bravery that doesn't shout or slam fists, but acts at just the right moment. From a pure heart. I don't know how Lily will remember that Christmas in the years to come. Maybe she'll think of the empty box, the heavy silence, the cold stares. But I hope what stays with her is the way Henry looked at her drawing, or the moment he wrote his first note to her. That's what's worth holding on to. Because sometimes it's not what we receive that makes something magical. It's what we're brave enough to give. I never wrote back to Henry, not because I was angry or didn't appreciate what he'd done, but because I knew some things don't need to be said. They've already been understood, accepted, and maybe are quietly growing into something else, slow but real. Lily still turns the music box each night before bed, but lately she doesn't just listen. She's started to hum along. Her voice is light as a breeze, off-key at times, but still she sings. And every time she does, I feel a little more at peace. I know my daughter will grow up without needing the walls I once built to protect myself. She won't learn to stay silent when she's hurt, or believe that she has to be tough to survive. She'll know that gentleness is a powerful choice, and kindness is a silent but sharp kind of strength. My story with my father might not be finished, but thanks to Lily, it's taken a different path. A new door has opened. Not wide, but just enough to let the light in. And sometimes just one ray of light is all it takes to illuminate a road we thought was forgotten. The story of Lily and me has shown me that in real life, what changes people isn't logic, but unconditional sincerity. A small gesture, a gift born from pure affection, can soften even the most hardened hearts. Kindness doesn't ask for anything in return, but it holds the power to shift the impossible. And sometimes all it takes is one child who believes in goodness to make the whole world just a little more gentle. What do you think of Patricia and Lily's story? Do you believe kindness can reach even the coldest hearts? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.